Good afternoon. His Excellency Mr. Joseph N. Boakai, the Vice President of Liberia. His Excellency Mr. Rui Duarte Barros, the Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau. Mr. Sudhir Vyas, Secretary, West, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Mr. S.R. Rao, Commerce Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Mr. Shamal Gupta, Excellencies, Ministers, Governors, and Members of Parliament from Africa, industry leaders from Africa and India, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome to each one of you to this valedictory session of the 9th CII-EXIM Bank India-Africa Project Partnership Conclave. It has truly been an outstanding, enriching, and indeed a very insightful 2-day of deliberations and discussions that we believe will go a long way towards taking the India-Africa partnership to the next level. It's my unique privilege to very warmly welcome their Excellencies, the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, to this very important valedictory session. We deeply appreciate your presence at this conclave and thank you for coming to India and participating extensively at this conclave. We hope you had a fruitful and a very meaningful conclave. I am pleased to welcome Mr. Sudhir Vyas, the Secretary West, and Mr. S.R. Rao, Commerce Secretary, who are leading India's economic engagement with Africa with deep personal interest. Partnership with the Ministry of External Affairs has been one of the most important facets of this EXIM Bank CII conclave, and we are so happy that we have with us Mr. Sudhir Vyas. We also received extensive support in getting this conclave on the way from the Commerce Ministry, and really would like to acknowledge Mr. S.R. Rao for his presence and participation. CII is happy to note the progress we have made during the last 2 days at the conclave. The plenary sessions covered a comprehensive cross-section of themes including development, finance, power, and technology partnerships. We had 19 parallel sessions for specific sectors and regions that brought together interested players. For the information of both Mr. Sudhir Vyas and Mr. S.R. Rao, I'd like to mention that, sirs, we had 3 guest countries at this conclave. We have had 7 heads of governments and states participating. We had more than 80 ministers from 30 countries who participated in this conclave, and 9 governors from 3 countries. We had more than 40 members of parliament from 21 countries, and in all 900 delegate members from 45 countries from Africa. With all this, we have been able to take forward 500 projects in this conclave with a value of $70 billion US. I'm confident that the outcomes of these discussions and deliberations would lead to a concrete proposal and translate into action into the ground. Coming to the theme of this session, CII strongly believes that partnerships such as that between India and Africa can combat the challenges that the world faces today. The global shutdown, or rather slowdown, has compelled nations to look for new growth opportunities. Within the overall declaration, developing nations suffer disproportionately since they are at the same time battling the challenges of poverty alleviation, development, and income generation. The list of global issues confronting us is indeed very long, ranging from common actions to rejuvenate growth, to reworking global financial systems and how to make trade work for development. These issues are intimately linked to emerging challenges such as climate change, use of finite natural resources, environmental degradation, and human development in terms of healthcare and education. These challenges can only be met at a global level, but so far the action has been vitiated by multiple perspectives. One solution is to create partnership and evolve common agendas amongst nations that can be then taken jointly to the global table. In this regard, India and Africa enjoy several key commonalities and convergences. CI would like to suggest that the two sides strengthen the dialogue process that has been under the way on the India-Africa Summit platform. Trade ministers of both sides have been meeting regularly, and such dialogue can include industry members as well as since industry is the major stakeholder in international and national outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe these 2 days would be extremely important. Until we meet again next year, there is a lot of actions that we have taken on our notes that would help develop and nourish this partnership even further. I believe all our distinguished panelists would offer more insights on these issues in the valedictory session. And with that, I would like to once again thank each one of you for spending these 2 days so effectively with us and really helping this process of building this partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome and thank you very much.
It now gives me great pleasure to invite our guest speaker for the valedictory session, His Excellency Mr. Rui Duarte Barros, Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau. Excellency, please.
Mr. Secretary of Commerce, Government of India, members of government, the President of Confederation of Indian Industry, Mr. Chairman of EXIM Bank of India, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen of the private sector, dear guests, I have the privilege to speak to you and through you to the population of India. I'm honored to be here with the member of my cabinet and the broad representation of the government of people of Guinea-Bissau. You can never imagine as the people and the government of Guinea-Bissau are honored through inviting me here. I waited for this day with a great anticipation because I wanted to quickly tell to my counterpart, His Excellency, Mr. Singh, the President, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Chairman of CIE, the President of EXIM Bank, and to the Indian population, the appreciation that Guinea-Bissau people and the government of Guinea-Bissau have asked me to convey to you. Through my voice, the population of Guinea-Bissau like to express its gratitude to this noble initiative and for the constant support of the government to all African countries without exception. We are really grateful. My government and I, together with all my cabinet, have prepared this journey, frankly, just to tell you how proud we are of India's presence in Africa, and as we are also proud of the work of Gandhi, which inspires the entire world. However, we must unite our forces at all levels to protect our economies against organized crimes, drugs, trafficking, and terrorism. We are deeply depressed by the massacre of Indians in Kashmir and in the sub-region and all terrorist acts that your beautiful country is subject to. We strongly condemn in the strongest term all acts of terrorism. The annual CIE-EXIM Bank Conclave is a platform of exchange that allows India and Africa to better discover each other opportunities for a better understanding and the fulfill cooperation for mutual development of our economies. We are aware that reforms have to be performed in our respective countries. We are undertaking it with a great courage, but like India, we are intended to follow our path while opening to the world. His Excellency Prime Minister, during his speech in the General Assembly of the United Nations in September 2011, said that the international community must play its role in assisting the transition process and the resumption of institutions, but the idea that orders are imposed from outside is a big mistake. In Guinea-Bissau, the transition has brought our population together and they make all political parties to have the same goal, the development of our economy, equity, share of the resources of the country, so to make our country an attractive destination for all investors, especially Indian operators. India and the ECOWAS and the UMOA have perfectly understood how societies should be reorganized. This is what brings you today to offer us this forum to express our pride in belonging to the camp of those who believe that a new world order should be based on noble and equity criteria. The developing country need investment technology and access to the international markets for their products. We need assistance in the field of education, health, human rights, and the development of our agriculture. The entire African people thank His Excellency for being the ambassador of poor and oppressed countries. We will look like here to thank His Excellency, Mr. Prime Minister, my dear counterpart, for this support to all people in Africa. His Excellency is not only our ambassador, he has also proposed appropriate solution to all these people suffering. During the India-African Forum in Addis Ababa, he has offered lines of credit for a value of $5 billion to finance projects in Africa and $700 million in form of donation to support the development of our human resources, transfer of technology, and the building new institutions that help countries achieve development as far from the Millennium Goals. The International Committee will gain a lot to listen to His Excellency's speech and also accept, finally, India as a permanent member at the United Nations Security Council. The bilateral relationship between our two countries has always been exceptionally good. In 1947, when Britain finally left India, it left behind a country totally devastated by poverty and the famine. There is no doubt that India is now among the most powerful countries through the development of his agro-industrial and the training program designed by Indian experts and the technicians from different horizons, taking into account the socioeconomic and the strict adherence to the guidelines. Agriculture is the most important sector in Guinea-Bissau economy. It represents 57.2% of GDP and employs 85% of the workforce and accounts for 96% of export. Guinea-Bissau is the second largest exporter of cashew in Africa, with nearly about 180 million tons exported nuts per year, more than 80% of it exported to India for processing. Guinea-Bissau has all of the most requested national resources in the world, taking about oil and gas, phosphate, bauxite, zinc, aluminum, zircon, etc. Guinea-Bissau offers many other opportunities that you will discover while visiting the country and through our newly created promotion agency. We thank all the participants. We thank the Indian authorities to boost the bilateral relation between our two countries. Especially, I want to thank Mr. Malesh Mahes, Chairman of CEFTEC, India. We must find a way to ensure a strong growth while protecting the environment and take into account the impact of climate change. We must unite our forces and at all levels to fight against the threat for the well-being of our population and our economy. So we urge all officials, ministers, directors of departments, ambassadors, economic operators to play their role to facilitate this process. We have noted that the 9th Conclave CII-EXIM Bank has achieved its goal as a platform to highlight India-Africa wonderful bilateral relation, bringing more than 45 country participants from different culture, language, and recognized expertise, exchanging views, and offering one another business opportunities in their country of origin, with 500 projects for about $7 billion. We are sure that the next conclave will see many successful joint ventures. We believe that a task force should be implemented for the follow-up of this joint venture and agreement in order to highlight the impact of the conclave on our business relation. We take this opportunity to express our gratitude for the constant support that your beautiful country always offers to the developing countries. Once more, we express our gratitude for this tribune offered to Guinea-Bissau delegation to tell the entire world how Guinea-Bissau has moved to a completely different and attractive country. May God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And now to give his special remarks, I invite Mr. Sudhir Vyas, Secretary West, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Mr. Vyas, please.
Your Excellencies, distinguished captains of commerce and industry, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to participate in today's valedictory session of the 9th CII-EXIM Bank Conclave. First, a word on the conclave itself. Over these past 8 years, the India-Africa Conclave has come to acquire a prominent role in developing the collaborative agenda between India and Africa as a vehicle for wider exchange and dissemination of information on Indian enterprises. It also explores avenues for Indian participation in larger major projects by addressing the crucial issue of resource mobilization in Africa. I'm delighted with the outcome that the Secretary General of CII has just shared with us. And I'm also aware that on the margins of this conference, a dense set of very meaningful meetings on Indian lines of credit have taken place, and I do hope these have been useful and productive. The very impressive presence at this conclave of distinguished dignitaries from the various African countries and from India itself, with the captains of business and industry, have provided fuller substance to the deliberations. The inspiring addresses by the Indian leaders, as well as their excellencies, the leaders of African, have set the tone for the conclave. We are delighted that Burundi, Cameroon, and Zambia were the guest countries. I thank each and every one of you for your participation and meaningful contribution, and for all the good wishes and very kind words that you have expressed for my country. In a period where the world is emerging from a global economic crisis, compounded by the crisis in the Eurozone, many of the answers for the future will lie in Africa. Africa's growth is, of course, in Africa's interest, but it is equally in the interest of the rest of the world. It is therefore incumbent on us to look at the obstacles in the way, the challenges before us, to open the path for rapid, inclusive, sustainable growth in the continent. Issues such as food security, energy security, skills and knowledge, financing for infrastructure, the issues of global economic and political governance. These are all issues on which India and Africa have strong overlapping interests. Be it in fora such as the World Trade Organization, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, at the United Nations itself, and in its associated bodies, R2, the Indian subcontinent and the African continent have worked together in a very productive fashion. And it is my hope that we can continue this collaborative effort into the future. A few words on the India-Africa partnership. Political relations between India and Africa have been close, evolving from India's steadfast support in the struggle against colonialism and apartheid. This historical association has now been transformed into a more functional relationship with accent on economic cooperation and human resource development. Because in the ultimate analysis, whatever be the international climate, and this is of course important, the answers that have to be found will lie in will have to be found by the African countries themselves. It is the African people, job creation, the upliftment of very large populations, education, knowledge, skills development. It is these areas where we will find answers. Tomorrow's world is not going to be defined between developing and developed countries. It is going to be defined between those that promote knowledge, that innovate, and those that do not. We take pride in our model of cooperation with Africa, and we have make every attempt to make this as consultative, participative, responsive, and based on Africa's own assessments of its needs. The India-Africa Forum Summit programs, two of which have been held so far in 2008 in India and 2011 in Addis Ababa, have the objective of providing a new structure and a renewed dynamism to our partnership. To support this process of trying to meet the challenges before us, the focus of our summits has been on job creation, on skills, on institution building, on capacity building, issues such as agriculture and food security, and infrastructure, energy, and so on. The IAFS process is a unique engagement at three levels: the continental, the regional, and the bilateral. And we believe that this model of cooperation is appreciated and is producing results, but we would be very, very happy to work with African countries to see whether we can adapt this, take this forward in a manner that will meet your specific needs. I'm delighted that this conference has also brought together the captains of industry in the private sector, but because ultimately it is the medium and small industries in which India has capacities and is most willing to share whatever expertise it has with the African countries. It is these that are going to create the jobs, that are going to create the skills, that are going to form the bedrock for Africa's growth in the future. With these few words, I'd like to once again commend CII and the EXIM Bank for organizing this conclave, for making it so successful, and I'd like to thank each one of you for your presence here and your valuable contributions. I hope that your stay here has been pleasant, and I wish you a very, very pleasant trip back to your home countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vyas. And now, may I invite Mr. S.R. Rao, Commerce Secretary, Government of India, to give his special remarks. Mr. Rao, please.
Thank you, Miss. Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, and dear friends, I'm quite humbled to be amidst this distinguished gathering of Excellencies and distinguished participants who have traveled a long distance from Africa, which geographically speaking is homeland for all Indians as well, till tectonic movements pulled us apart. But it doesn't put asunder the feelings for each other, which continues through all these centuries. I feel quite empowered today because I stand between you and well-deserved lunch. I have just only 25 pages of a printed speech to go through. I should endeavor to make it as painless as possible. I would, at the foremost, congratulate all the distinguished delegates who have come to be part of this very engaging conclave. This annual conclave is perhaps the most definitive platform for knowledge sharing and project partnerships between India and African countries. I'm confident that the multiple engagements and interactions that have taken place over the last 2 days will yield greater results for our mutual benefit. The recommendations that you have made during the course of deliberations for strengthening India-Africa project partnerships will be duly considered and acted upon at the earliest. I assure you, Honorable Prime Minister, sir, your advice is foremost in our heart, and we do mean business to expeditiously put into place the majority of the recommendations. Ladies and gentlemen, the future course of India-Africa partnership is important, not just for 2.3 billion people living in Africa and India, which constitutes 30% of world's population. We have large markets, and our consumer preferences will certainly impact the decisions of global producers and service providers, which in turn will influence global trade and investment inflows into our countries. Sustainable development has been discussed intensely at the conclave. The delegates from both sides have underlined the need to develop and promote greater technologies, green technologies and practices, as well as renewable energy sources. This would particularly be important in the context of our common quest, as His Excellency Mr. Sudhir Vyas said, for food and energy security of our peoples. I'm happy to see that technology has become the core of India-Africa cooperation endeavor. Today there is a greater knowledge sharing between key research and scientific institutions on both sides. However, we need to ensure that businesses adopt these technologies and innovations and contribute to the betterment of our societies. Ladies and gentlemen, the India-Africa Economic Partnership has come a long way from the days of primary resource trade. This is a reflected spectacular increase in our bilateral trade flows over the last 2 decades. Bilateral trade has grown from a small, less than $1 billion in 91 to current $70 billion. Notably, the trade balance is tilted in favor of Africa, demonstrating the spirit of partnership with which India has approached Africa. We have already revised upwards our bilateral trade target to 90 billion to be achieved by 2015. We need to make all possible efforts to achieve this target well before 2015. We are also making conscious efforts to increase our bilateral trade with the least developed African economies, ensuring that they enjoy a favorable balance of trade. African leadership has appreciated India's gesture to extend duty-free tariff preference scheme to the least developed nations. I'm happy to announce about 33 African countries have taken benefit of this, and we exhort other countries who are of LDC nature to partake of our offer, which is asymmetrical and on a non-reciprocal basis. This would immensely help in boosting African exports to my country. Agreements such as free trade agreements are an important instrument for achieving trade and investment integration. In the African region, we are actively engaged in negotiations with Southern Africa Customs Union, or the SACU, for a PTA, and with Mauritius for a comprehensive economic cooperation partnership. In addition, a joint study group has been constituted with the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, for examining feasibility of FTA or a PTA. We are exploring the possibilities of entering into such agreements with other African regional economic communities as well. The annual India-Africa Ministers' Dialogue, an initiative which started in the second India-Africa Forum Summit in Addis in 2011, will greatly enhance India-Africa economic relations. Till now, 2 meetings of India-Africa trade and industry ministers have been held. During the second meeting in March 2012, held in New Delhi, Indian assistance to African countries in the cotton sector was launched. We are working closely with the African Union for convening the third trade ministers meeting in the very near future in Africa. India-Africa Business Council, launched during the second India-Africa Trade Ministers meeting in New Delhi in 12, is also a useful initiative for enhancing the economic and commercial relations between India and Africa. In recent years, India's private investments in Africa have also grown appreciably, with leading Indian manufacturing firms and service providers establishing their footprint in key African markets across a wide range of sectors such as agriculture, small-scale industry, mining, communication technologies, oil pipelines, automobile plants, chemical industry, power generation, etc. Indian companies have now widespread presence all over Africa. Indian government and industry have maintained a keen stakeholder interest in Africa's prosperity, and as a result, all business engagements between Africa and India, bilateral and multilateral, have been determined by a well-defined development agenda. The challenge hereon would be to identify and intensify our cooperation in R&D, high-end manufacturing, modernization of farm practices, development of alternate energy like biofuels, even as we maintain keen focus on education and health sectors. Down the decades, Indian governmental agencies and corporates have also been conducting capacity building and skills development program in Africa. Substantial funds have been committed under India Economic Forum Summit for economic engagement in Africa, including establishment of many Pan-African institutions. India has also committed to provide a $5 billion US line of credit to African nations to help fund economic development in the continent. In addition, the Honorable Minister, Mr. Anand Sharma, has also recently announced $500 million of line of credit with interest equalization through EXIM Bank, a fund which will largely go towards infrastructure building in African continent. I would request the policymakers from Africa who are present here to discuss the details with our CMD of EXIM Bank, who is here today. It is also important we undertake an impact assessment of these initiatives and come up with a blueprint for an integrated approach towards addressing poverty alleviation employment generation, and entrepreneurship development in Africa. India is also called upon to play a greater role in promoting economic integration in Africa. This, I believe, will be the key economic driver as Indian industry has been looking to address regional markets in Africa so as to set up its investments in the region. India-Africa partnership has grown in scale and stature with each passing year. Today, we are in a myriad new opportunities for us to broaden this enduring partnership. In this light, I can say without much hesitation that we have had one of the most productive engagements in the past 2 days. I wish all the participants at this conclave all success in setting and surpassing new milestones for our engagement in economic and commercial spheres. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to make this a special mention of CII and EXIM Bank's defining role in strengthening the India-Africa economic partnership through these path-breaking initiatives. Of this, annual conclave stands out as the most enterprising event. I've heard that when elephants mate, there's a huge deal of trumpeting, trampling, and causing concern to the entire environment in which these two elephants mate. The engagements between this great continent of Africa and the subcontinent of India is pretty much like mating of elephants. Results, I believe, come after 2 years by way of a baby elephant, but I think our engagement has gone on long enough and the fruits are there for us to see. It is now left to the collective wisdom of policymakers coming from Africa who are present here in large numbers, as also the government functionaries and our business leaders from India who can make this, take this partnership to the next level. I was with a great deal of interest reading this special edition of Economist, which talks about aspiring Africa. Pretty much of Africa, or as Western commentators put it, as a dark continent. Nothing to do with the color of our skin, but so little of this continent was known to the outside world. Of course, that doesn't include India. That to them, it is an enigma how to engage with Africa. Well, advice to my colleagues from Indian businesses and enterprises is, I think we need to look at the long haul in developing and nurturing these partnerships which take us to the next level. And we shouldn't be misguided by what is apparent, what is on the surface. And I'm giving this with a great deal of personal experience. Only yesterday, I had the privilege of sitting next to Her Excellency, Miss Claudine Munare. I'm not too sure whether she's present here, who is the Trade Minister from Republic of Congo, Brazzaville. I was talking to her over the lunch in which I thought she was an extremely young and a brilliant person. So I complimented her and I made a guess that she could be around 25 years of age. She turned around, she is not fluent in English, she is fluent in French, in which I know nothing. She said that she is 60 and she's a grandmother. And that's where I would advise my Indian friends, don't commit those mistakes. I think we need to delve deeply into Africa. God bless Africa, God bless India. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. And now to give his concluding remarks for this valedictory session and the conclave, may I invite Mr. Shamal Gupta, Chairman, CII Africa Committee. Mr. Gupta, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining us at the valedictory session at the end of the India-Africa project partnership over the last 2 days. We have arrived at the very end of an extremely engaging, successful, and meaningful conclave over the last 3 days. Political heads, industry captains, businessmen, academics were engaged in intensive deliberations on key opportunities and issues that underpin India-Africa relationship. I have no hesitation in stating, as you have heard from the leaders sitting on the dais, that this conclave, year by year, is moving up the bar and is yet a great success for important partnership in economic arena and business development, which is not only important for India and Africa, but for the whole world. Africa-India relationship, apart what you heard that India emerged out of Africa, that is true, but in the recent years, Indians left India for Africa 152 years back as indentured labor, and then doctors, teachers, engineers, and business traders did go and settle there. That was the beginning of a new generation. And of course, recently, when people were terming that this is the area of development and growth, you see much about what is talked about Africa. But India's interest in Africa politically remained strong over the decades, or maybe over 50, 60 years. And that is now taking shape. The conclave has been very successful, and we greatly appreciate the gracious presence of His Excellency Dr. Guy Scott, President of the Republic of Zambia. We thank you very much for your presence and participation. Then HE Mr. Philemon Young, Prime Minister of Cameroon, His Excellency the Vice President of Uganda, His Excellency the Vice President of Liberia, His Excellency the Second Vice President of Republic of Burundi, Mr. H.E. Mr. Daniel Duncan, Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire, and H.E. Mr. Rui Durante Barros, the Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau, and for your very excellent speech, Prime Minister, we greatly appreciate that. Your Excellencies, we have noted each one of your valuable suggestions and recommendations with great care, and we assure you that it will soon reflect in the process of collaboration between the two countries. The conclave has set very high target this year and achieved a lot. We have, as the DG has mentioned, 900 delegates from Africa, a record high from 45 African countries. In terms of business, 477 worth of proposals valued approximately 70 billion has been discussed, but more interestingly, a new setup has been done. This is introduced a new web-based B2B meeting setup, and I'm happy to confirm that more than 1,500 B2B meetings have taken place over the last 2 days on the portal. And this was a lot of people asked me about this, and I think this B2B meeting, I understand, has gone up very well. It's my firm belief that all these numbers will reach new height in the coming year when we meet again in New Delhi for the 10th edition of this conclave, and I would like to request you to save the dates. It is now slated to be 9th to 11th March 2014. So 1 year from now, we hope to meet, and I'm sure you all and your other colleagues from Africa will participate in this. Thank you very much. We have also extremely fortunate to have had the Republic of Burundi, Republic of Cameroon, and Republic of Zambia as our guest countries. Our special thanks to leadership of Burundi, Cameroon, and Zambia for lending so much depth in this conclave over the last 2 days. I wish to also extend our heartfelt thanks to Honorable Minister of Commerce, Industry, and Textile, Mr. Anand Sharma, for his leadership in providing this partnership between India and Africa over the years. He has given a tremendous push, supported and participated in bringing it to the conclave to this shape. Thanks to the Honorable Minister. Then I'll have to say that we owe a deep sense of gratitude to Mr. Sudhir Vyas, Secretary West, Minister of External Affairs, and for his presentation here was extremely useful. Then Mr. Pinak Ranjan Chakraborty, Secretary Economic Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. Mr. P.S. Raghavan, Special Secretary, DPA, Government of India. Mr. Ravi Mangar, Joint Secretary, East and Southern Africa. Then Mr. Sanjeev Kohli, Joint Secretary, Minister of External Affairs, and Madam Radhika Lokesh, Joint Secretary, DPA, Government of India, for your unstinted support at every stage of this conclave. I'll be failing in my duty if I do not mention about Mr. D.S. Deshi, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. He has led tremendous support to this conclave over the years, and we are very thankful to him. Further, I want to say about the contribution of EXIM Bank, and particularly Mr. Ranganathan, the CMD, for his all support all over these years. He has been with us, CII, all the stages of development and progress. We are extremely grateful to African missions in India. I want to say that in all CII meetings, that African missions, heads of missions, and the Dean, they have participated to bring forward the various issues and problems with a view so that we can move together. And also the same way, the Indian missions in Africa have supported us many ways, and result is what you see today, 900 delegations, top-level delegations, ministers, presidents, vice presidents from Africa has come here to this conclave. So I want to thank heads of missions in India, African mission in India, and Indian missions in Africa for their continued support towards developing this to what is this stage. I'd also like to thank our friends from Africa who have traveled great distances to participate in the conclave deliberations. I'm equally thankful to our Indian delegates who have made great efforts to be the host to all the delegates from overseas country. I wish our deep record of appreciation we received from sponsors and medias. Not the most important thing, but I hope this participation will further. And I'm also very thankful to Mr. Adi Godrej, President of CII, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, DG of CII, the CII team, Africa Committee, who has played a key role in making this partnership program a great success. I thank you once again and look forward to meeting you in the 10th conclave to be held in March 2014. Wish you all the best, and our foreign delegates wish you safe flight home, and our Indian delegates to come prepared for the next meeting. In between, let's do the homework and reach the targets which we hope to reach. A trade between Africa and India has been set at $90 billion, as we have heard from the Secretary. Indian investments have crossed over $50 billion, but much more needs to be done, and there are opportunities which will be mutually beneficial and the long-term interest of India and Africa. Indian engagement has been always participative between India and Africa. That is what our government proclaims, and we follow that. It is not just do business, but it is India will participate in the development of African economy and the business and the progress. Thanks to all of you. Thank you very much. See you next year. Thank you.